everybody. Today we are going to start talking about our critical analysis. Yay! Now remember, a critical analysis rubric is available in our Blackboard space. You can always email me too if you'd like a copy of that if you can't find it. Before we get started, I want to encourage you guys to kind of always review the resources that we have available in our announcements and throughout our Blackboard space, because often the questions that we might have about our specific assignments or the content that we're learning will be answered in those references that we have, those alternative and supplemental resources that we've made available to you guys to support your learning. So even though they're supplemental, I do encourage you guys to check them out. And of course, you can always ask questions in the general questions discussion forum or email me anytime, no questions too small. But you might help save some frustration if you take a look at those references and resources that we have for you. For instance, the ones that are directly above me right now in this week's first module, they're really going to offer some outstanding resources to kind of walk you through this critical analysis process. One of them even has a series of worksheets that can help you kind of break down what McFadden or Tan or our other author is doing in their essay, how they're reaching their audience, that kind of stuff. So it's really handy. It's not necessarily required, but I do encourage you. It's going to super support your success. All right, on to our critical analysis. Yay, we're finally starting it. I mean, all of the work we've done so far has been supporting the progress there, but now we're kind of actually doing our first real writing plan for that big paper we're working on. Now last week, excuse me, we explored the concepts of analysis, literal reading, active reading, and now we're going to apply all of that to our critical analysis. Okay, hi Fan, there you are. I kind of want to talk about what exactly we're going to be looking for, what we're doing with this critical analysis essay that we're working on. In this week's assignment, what we're doing is we're going to be actually making a writing plan, and I will be doing a different video to kind of take us through that process. So let's kind of focus on the concept of critical analysis first. What we want to do is reread our notes from the last module and reread our essay again. Reading repeatedly helps us become really familiar with the author and the essay that they're working on. I know it might sound redundant, it might even feel redundant to read something over and over, but giving it a quick review at least once or twice before moving on to the next writing step is really going to help keep those concepts and those reactions that you've been exploring in the front of your mind as you move on to our next assignment. So our critical analysis essay is going to be looking at a couple different questions. Remember, critical thinking is primarily asking questions and digging deeper into the content and into our interpretation of it. For this essay, what you want to do is kind of consider the following questions. And we've touched base on these with our writer's notes, our writing notes, and some of the discussions that we've been having. What's the author's main argument? What's their purpose? Do you agree or disagree with that author? And some of us working with McFadden definitely have agree or disagree opinions, and that's totally okay. That's the cool thing about writing and interpretations. We can all have different opinions. Is the author's argument strong or weak? I really kind of want you to focus on this question. Is the author being effective? When McFadden uses that language, is it supporting or detracting from her effectiveness? When Tan uses real-world examples that her mother went through, is she reaching you better than maybe if she just used statistics? If the gentleman that wrote the one about factory and college life, if he was just bashing on factory life instead of showing empathy towards those factory workers, would that have made his argument stronger or weaker? This is the kind of stuff that we really want to kind of look at in our critical analysis, okay? Another question we want to look at is, can you find any evidence from the text itself to support your opinion? Remember those key points that you kind of looked at. Do they support that opinion that you have of whether or not the author's argument was strong or weak? That startling statistic that they might include, or that really kind of humorous satirical language they might use, is there any examples of that in that essay that support your opinion or your claim? Can you make any personal connections to the text? Have you ever experienced anything that they have? Did you have any of that gut reaction that we've kind of talked about before? And did that affect your interpretation of the text? And then finally, what from your own life influenced you to draw the conclusions you did from your reading? Maybe you have experienced factory life, and that's why you kind of can relate to that gentleman that wrote that paper. Maybe you work in a field where gender neutral terms is something that you have to do day to day, so maybe that influences your opinion of the McFadden piece. Maybe you yourself once have experienced prejudice because of the way you communicate, so maybe that's why you're drawn to the conclusions you have for Tan. So essentially what we're doing with our critical analysis is asking questions, detailed questions, looking for those detailed answers to kind of help us explore the efficiency of the author. Now, it's not necessarily whether or not you like the content. We do want to explore whether or not you agree or disagree, but we really want to look at how the author is communicating, and that is what you're analyzing. We are not arguing whether or not we need to have gender neutral terms. We're not arguing whether or not college is necessary. We are exploring and analyzing how the author presented their argument. What evidence in there, what key points did they use to effectively support their argument, that kind of stuff. And I know it's a little bit different than maybe what we're used to doing, so you can always get a hold of me and I'll be happy to brainstorm and talk with you on this process. But really, what I want you to do is focus on asking these types of questions, and definitely review that awesome, I'm pointing so you can see, that awesome website that I have listed up there with those worksheets. They're going to help you kind of get to the bottom of what it is to have a critical analysis, to do a critical analysis. And MindEdge is really good with it as well. And I just made it super huge for you. So let's kind of look at what MindEdge recommends that we do in terms of our critical analysis. First, one of the things that we need to do is make sure that we state our opinion clearly. Okay, so we ask all these awesome questions, and now we're actually kind of starting with our writing plan. Make sure you state your opinion clearly. It's your opinion. It can't be wrong. There's no right or wrong answer here when we're asking for your opinion. Okay, so don't be shy about stating your opinion on the text. You do absolutely need to make a clear-cut opinion. Don't say, yeah, it was good, but it was bad. Don't be in the middle. Don't be on that teeter-totter of opinion. You're not going to offend anybody with your opinion. That's the cool thing about writing. Well, let me rephrase it. You might offend somebody with it, but that's okay. It's your opinion. You're allowed to express your opinion with these articles, so go right ahead. Be very clear. Don't use vague language. Don't say, I think, perhaps, maybe. Say, yeah. McFadden uses strong language, and that's awesome. So have a strong opinion. And if you're not sure how to express that opinion, let me know and I'll walk you through it. So you want to state your opinion clearly. Second, you want to use evidence. Remember that idea of key points that we talked about. You need to support that opinion with detailed evidence from the text. And what this means is that you need to quote, paraphrase, and summarize direct phrases and sentences from that text to support what you're saying. Okay? And we'll talk about this a little bit more next week once we get there, but I kind of want you to start thinking about what bits of evidence, what direct quotes, what paraphrase content can you do. And we'll touch on the difference between paraphrasing and quotations next week, but just to kind of give you an idea, direct quotation is when you put it in quotation marks, and it's exactly what the author said in there. You copied it word for word, put it in quotation marks, and you cited it. Paraphrase is when you kind of put it in your own words. It's kind of a retelling, and we still want to cite that as well. And we'll have more information about proper citations coming up. So state your opinion. Say McFadden uses strong language and it's amazing. It's a little insensitive, but it's amazing. Okay, so that's my opinion. So state your opinion and then use examples. So I would go through that McFadden article and find specific examples in which she uses strong language and where it may or may not be considered insensitive. If you were doing the Tan essay and you were talking about how her specific examples of her mom's struggles really made her argument effective, you would say Tan's use of her mother's life as examples really made her argument powerful. For instance, when she's talking about that moment where she's talking to the stockbroker, okay, Okay, so you state your claim and then you go in to support it with evidence and examples from that essay. The next thing you want to do, and we want to keep in mind, and this is fairly important with the critical analysis, we want to focus on the text, not on us. We are expressing our opinion, but we don't want to put the emphasis on us. So we really want to avoid phrases like "I think" or "in my opinion." We know that you think and that this is your opinion as your audience because we're reading your work. It's written by you. Therefore, we know that it's your opinion. So you don't really need to say "I think" or "I feel." Just state it. So if you think that Tan's stories are really relatable, just say Tan's stories are really relatable. If you think that McFadden's language is strong and powerful, all you have to say is McFadden's language is strong and powerful. Okay, so let's use our language to focus on the text and not on us. Okay? And then finally, let's be open to revision. This is really hard, and it's still hard for me this far in my writing career. Revision is an ongoing process. Writing is an ongoing process. And it's sometimes after we write, it's very hard to take suggestions, and that's totally okay. But you really want to use the feedback that I give you, that maybe your peers might give you in the discussion forums, and use it effectively to make sure that that essay that we're working towards is going to be as awesome as it can be. So even as we're writing, remember that critiques and editing suggestions are not a personal attack. They're ways to encourage you to have the best organized paper, to make sure that you are expressing yourself the way that you're intending to express yourself, making sure your citations are correct, and essentially making that paper the best that it can be. So let's, as we go, be open to the idea of revision. Okay. And that is essentially what we're doing with our critical analysis. I know I went over a lot of stuff, and we're going to touch base on this again in the middle of this week as well as throughout the rest of the term. What I really want you to do as you're approaching this concept of critical analysis is ask questions about your responses. And remember that we're not necessarily focusing on whether or not we wholly agree with the topic. We don't want to get into a debate in our paper about whether or not gender-neutral terms are effective or whether or not college is necessary. What we want to do is explore our interpretations of how effective the author is. Is McFadden's language so offensive or so amazing that it affects how her readers interpret her work? Is Amy Tan's personal references touching and empathetic, or are they distracting? Is the author talking about the school, I can't remember, it's right in front of me, Braxma, there we go. Is Braxma coming across as a know-it-all because he's just a punk kid who has a summer job in the factory, or is his word choice and his observations poignant, and do they reach you? Okay, so we want to talk about how the author is presenting their information, not necessarily just that topic. Okay, so I know this is a lot. If you have any questions, let me know and I'll be happy to talk it out with you. Good luck. You guys don't need luck, you're going to do awesome.